Welcome to the Counting and Clapping tutorial series, created by the junior high band teachers of the Gilbert Unified School District in Gilbert, Arizona. Counting and Clapping tutorial number 5, eighth notes. At the end of this tutorial, you should understand how to count and clap single eighth notes, how to count and clap beamed eighth notes, and how to count and clap various rhythm patterns containing a mixture of notes and rests that include single and beamed eighth notes. To be successful, you need to already understand the concepts taught in these earlier tutorials: all rhythm tree tutorials, basic time signatures and beats, counting and clapping part 1, conventions, part 2, whole, half, and quarter notes, part 3, whole, half, and quarter rests, and part 4, ties and dotted half notes. Let's start with a review of how single and beamed eighth notes work. Eighth notes can be written as single notes. Here's 2 individual eighth notes. Or eighth notes can be connected together by a beam. Here's 2 eighth notes connected together by a beam. But nothing changes except how they look. 2 single eighth notes and 2 beamed eighth notes get the same counting. Most often, beams connect notes into groups of 2 or groups of 4. When writing in the counting, we write in a plus sign in between the numbers for the extra eighth notes. When we clap and count, we have to say the word "and" where we see the plus signs. 1 and, 2 and, 3 and, 4 and. Notice that there are a lot more eighth notes than there are quarter notes underneath them. That's because eighth notes are twice as fast as quarter notes.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Here's another video showing you that eighth notes are twice as fast as quarter notes.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and.
Single eighth notes and beamed eighth notes can both be in the same measure. We can use them however we want. Always check the time signature for the number of beats per bar, and when writing in the counting, write the counting directly under the notes. In this example, the top number in our time signature is a 4, so every measure has to have 4 beats. Count out loud and clap at the start of every note. In our first measure, we have to start out with 2 quarter notes, each getting their own clap and their own count. 1, 2. Then we have 4 individual eighth notes. Count and clap eighth notes twice as fast as the quarter notes. So these individual eighth notes are going to get the counting 3 and 4 and we clap and count them twice as fast. 3 and 4 and. Start all full bars with the number 1 and number all beats consecutively. Measure 2 is exactly the same as measure 1. The only difference is the eighth notes are beamed in measure 2 and they're single eighth notes in measure 1. We do this because sometimes we think it's easier to read the notes quickly when they're beamed together. We still have our same 2 quarter notes, 1, 2, and then 4 eighth notes, 3 and 4 and. The next measure starts with 2 eighth notes, 1 and, followed by a quarter note, 2. Then we have 2 single eighth notes, 3 and, followed by a quarter note, 4. The last measure starts with a quarter note, 1. Then we have 2 single eighth notes, 2 and, then another quarter note, 3, and 2 beamed eighth notes, 4 and. Here is a video showing the correct way to count and clap this example.
1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1, 2 and 3, 4 and.
Now let's look at a few examples where we incorporate beamed and single eighth notes with all of the other types of notes and rests that we've learned in earlier tutorials. Here's our first example. In measure 1, we start out with a quarter rest, so it gets count 1 but no clap. That's followed by 2 eighth notes that both get claps, 2 and. Then we have a quarter rest for count 3 and a quarter note clap for count 4, 3, 4. The next measure starts out with a quarter note for a clap on count 1 and a quarter rest with our hands apart on count 2, 1, 2. Then we have 4 eighth notes beamed together, so we clap and count 3 and 4 and. The third measure starts with 4 beamed eighth notes, so we clap and count 1 and 2 and we finish that measure with a half note, so we clap on count 3, keep our hands together for count 4, 3, 4. The last measure uses our dotted half note worth 3 counts, so we clap on count 1, keep our hands together for counts 2 and 3, 1, 2, 3. We end the measure with 2 single eighth notes that both get claps, 4 and. Here's a video showing the correct counting and clapping of example number 1.
1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and.
Let's take a look at another example. Example 2 gets a little trickier because we've added ties, and those ties go across measures. Measure 1 starts with a half rest, hands apart while we count 1, 2. Then we have 2 single eighth notes that get claps, 3 and then we have a quarter note on count 4, so we clap on count 4, but it is tied to the half note in the next measure. So clap on 4, keep our hands together for 1, 2 into the next measure. 4, 1, 2. Then we go on to 2 beamed eighth notes on count 3, 3 and our hands apart for the quarter rest on count 4. The next measure starts with 4 beamed eighth notes that all get claps, 1 and 2 and then we have a long note, a half note worth 2 counts tied to a whole note worth 4 counts. So we start on beat 3 with a clap, and we keep our hands together for count 4, and we continue to keep our hands together for counts 1, 2, 3, 4 on the whole note. It looks like this: 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's a video showing the correct counting and clapping for example number 2.
1, 2, 3, and 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1, and 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
And now for our final example. Example number 3 has a couple of very tricky spots because we have ties connecting eighth notes. We start out pretty simple with 2 eighth notes beamed together. Both of them get claps, 1 and. Then we have 2 single eighth notes, so they're going to be clapped the same way, but we count starting on 2, 2 and. Then we have a single quarter note, gets a clap by itself, count 3, and now our first tricky spot. We have 2 beamed eighth notes, 4 and, but the second eighth note is tied to the dotted half note in measure 2. So we clap on 4, we clap on the and after 4, but keep our hands together and continue counting into the next measure for the dotted half note, 1, 2, 3. It looks like this: 4 and 1, 2, 3. We end pretty simply in measure 2 with 2 single eighth notes that both get claps, 4 and. The third measure starts with a quarter rest, so no clap, but we do count, 1. Then we have another tricky spot: 2 eighth notes, so we know we're going to say 2 and, but the second eighth note is tied to the quarter note on count 3. So we're going to clap 2 and then keep our hands together while we move on to count 3 because we're making it a longer note. It looks like this: 2 and 3. The quarter note by itself on count 4 gets a clap. In the next measure, we have a half rest, hands apart while we count 1, 2. Then we have our 2 beamed eighth notes, 3 and, both with claps, and we end with a quarter rest. We say 4 with our hands apart. Here's a video showing the correct counting and clapping for our final example.
1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4.
This tutorial explained how to count and clap single and beamed eighth notes. It provided examples of rhythm patterns containing a mixture of notes and rests that included both single and beamed eighth notes. The next tutorial in this series adds eighth rests to various rhythm patterns.